Hello, my name is Raquel. In order to buy or sell, you have to have the money of the beast on your mind and your hand. And it's one of those words that's not translated correctly. They don't, most of these people don't have one of these Greek-English lexicons. You have to go to the big kind of library to find it. The Strong's Concordance doesn't really give a very good definition of it. But, let's see, here you go. There it is, the word charagma. And it says in the Apocalypse that no one buys or sells without the money of the beast on your mind or in your hand. And there's the word charagma. And that's the Liddell Scott Greek-English lexicon, charagma. And you can see that it means the impress on the coin and stamped money coin. And at about the same time that the Jews revolted against Rome, they started coining their own money. The Jews started coining their own money, and Nero Caesar's picture was on the money. And so that's what the book of Revelations is saying. And a lot of people say that the book was originally a Hebrew book, and then it was like plagiarized by Christians who added stuff at the beginning and the end. Well, I'll tell you the latest about NATALIE DYLAN. Really nothing. I'm still not a friend of hers anymore. She kicked me off of there basically over something really stupid. But I've been trying to influence her to to make a hymen picture. You know, she's selling her virginity at the Bunny Ranch in Nevada, and she used to call herself the beauty of capitalism, but she changed it over to something really stupid and innocuous, like oops. She says, "Oops, I didn't know I could not talk about sex." And you know, I had a whole lot of hope for her to do something good with all the publicity she's getting. She's been in the worldwide newspapers, but not much anymore. She's starting to fade back on the Google searches. But anyway, so if anything happens, I'll let you know. There she is at the Tyra Banks show. That's NATALIE. This is Dennis Hoff from the Bunny Ranch. He's the owner of the Bunny Ranch. And this is his girlfriend, who is also a prostitute. This guy is supposedly one of the men that was bidding. She's auctioning her virginity off there. And the highest bid so far is $3.8 million. And this is NATALIE's sister, Avia. And that's Air Force Amy, who's a prostitute. And her sister sold herself for like 3 weeks at the Bunny Ranch in order to pay off their tuition there. Her stepfather ran off with her bank account or her bank loan, got a fake loan or something like that, and so they didn't have money to finish their school. She has a master's degree in, or she has a bachelor's degree in women's studies, and she wants to get a master's degree in counseling so she can be a counselor for marriage and families. But I kind of wonder why somebody would want to pay $3.8 million for somebody's virginity. You know, like, what's he going to get out of it? You know, I mean, does he want the publicity? Or I'd like the publicity. I've offered to be in a 3-way deflowering video with her. And usually the way these deflowering videos work is they have a girl with her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend holds her head on his lap while some stud deflowers her, and they have a fake doctor come in to confirm that she has a hymen. She was supposed to be interviewed by Hustler magazine, but I haven't seen any interviews in there unless it's not on the cover. I keep looking for the new cover of Hustler to see if her interview's in there. But this would be the perfect time for her to take that hymen picture and pick up some extra money, you know. Hymen pictures are very rare on the internet. And I offered to go to San Diego. She lives in San Diego. I offered to go there and take the picture myself so that I could put my watermark on it and put it up on my website and a bunch of other different places. And like with my watermark, I'd put 666 as money on her picture. And then I'd, you know, all the keywords would be like hymen, NATALIE DYLAN, and this and that, you know. And then they could go to my website to find out more about the truth, you know, about the Kennedy assassination and the lies about the Holocaust. And the big thing right now is, and I've just put up a new web page. I've got this huge book. It's called Here is New York. Here is New York. And I got it from the library. It's like 800 pages. And they're trying to kick me off Wikipedia now because I've tried to edit some of these pages. I'm discussing it first. I've learned my lesson that you don't just start typing stuff in without, having anything really good to say. You have to discuss it first. They have discussion pages for each article. And so I have like a discussion going on the Kennedy assassination page, which isn't really going anywhere. And then I have a discussion on the controlled demolition of the World Trade Centers. It's obvious. When I got this book, I got this about 2 weeks ago because I was looking for the source of this picture of an I-beam. The World Trade Center, the major foundation that was holding the whole thing up were these columns in the middle, and they were like great big, huge, thick steel beams. And so there's like a picture of one of these beams that was cut in an angle, and the way they do a controlled demolition is they put a frame around it at an angle, and then the I-beam will slide off and the building will fall down. So that they use a special kind of a powder, a kind of a welding powder that melts the steel real fast. It's called thermite. But so I got this book trying to find that picture that maybe I could find a better source for, or some more background, because it's too hard to tell by looking at the picture whether or not if it was taken when they started the demolition. But I don't think they did. I think that the context of it is that it really was thermite. So I want to show you some pictures from this book to show you why I say that there were bombs. There were bombs in the World Trade Center buildings. And let's see, here you go. This is taken across the street from across the river, the Hudson River in New Jersey. And you can see this huge cloud of dust. And this is all, they pulverized. The whole World Trade Center was pulverized by these bombs. And so I'm doing some research on this. There's a special kind of bomb they have now that can do this. And this is all that was left of the World Trade Center. It's a 100-story building. And where'd the building go? The only thing you see here is steel and a bunch of papers and things. Like all the windows were blown out all around here too. And everything else was pulverized. I'm going to show you, like, look at here. This is the way it looked, like all over New York. They had all this debris everywhere. It was all pulverized, and it actually kind of like snowed on everybody. It looked like there was snow everywhere. Let's see if I can find some more here for you. I got some bookmarks. All right, here we go. Look, here's another picture of this is right after the World Trade Center collapsed. And like, what's this fire doing down here? The fire was way up on top. And why is this van totally burnt out, unless there was an explosion that brought the whole building down? And that's all that's left of the World Trade Center. There's nothing there. There's no pile of rubble or anything. And that's on fire. And then let's see, we got some more pictures here. And you can go to my website, and very near the top, there's a link to some of these pictures. Now there's the World Trade Center down there, and all this debris. You can see all this debris here. That's pulverized concrete, sheetrock, and asbestos. And a lot of these people that were there got lung problems. Here it is. It's almost, you can't even see anything anymore. And it was raining down on everybody. Here it is. Here's this guy crossing a bridge, and it's all just coming down like snow. And so like, it's obvious that there were bombs in there. But of course, who would have put him in there? Who could have put him in there? Well, the only people that could have done it is the government. And the government's the only one that has these kind of bombs. Israel has these kind of bombs. And there you go. That's all that's left of the World Trade Center. Here's another picture of all that's left. Shortly after this is the next day, right after the World Trade Center collapse, and there's nothing there. It's been totally pulverized. This here is a statue called Double Check. He's double checking his briefcase, and this is adjacent to the World Trade Center. And you can see how these trees have been blown over from the repercussions from the bombs inside of the World Trade Center. And there's a lot of people, a lot of firemen were saying that there was, whoops, there's the trees. I was showing you the wrong picture here. But there's another picture of it. But let's see. And then look at this fire truck. Now, why was this fire truck fired up like that unless there was an explosion nearby? So, I mean, why would the building collapse cause that truck to catch on fire? And here's some more evidence of an explosion. All this material got exploded up there. Who knows where these mannequins came from? But and then you can see the windows are all full of this powder and asbestos. There's a lot of evidence about these respiratory diseases that the cleanup crew had. Here's a panoramic view of what's left of the World Trade Center. It's a 100-story building. I mean, where's all the broken glass? You can see over here all the windows were blown out from the explosion. And it's kind of a panoramic thing. It goes to the next page here. And they're trying to dig out people. They're still trying to rescue people. But of course, they didn't find anybody. And there's some of the big beams. But those weren't the ones that were cut. I don't know why they broke like that. And these guys are cutting beams there. But so anyway, there's a whole lot of evidence that this World Trade Center was blown up. You know, they had these airplanes flying, of course, nobody's denying that, but there are some people that say that the airplanes were remote controlled and that the passenger lists were faked, or that's the hardest part to explain, really, is well, they sacrificed the people. And the whole purpose of this 9/11 thing was to get us involved in the Iraq War. Saddam Hussein was Israel's public enemy number one, and so they needed a way to get started with this war. It's just like Pearl Harbor. We, the United States, put an embargo on Japan and forced them to fire the first shot. They had a guy named, he was the Secretary of War, named Henry Stimson, and he wrote in his war diary that we must maneuver Japan into firing the first shot. And so, like, there was we were suffering our Great Depression, and there's like so much bad news in the newspaper. Okay, let's see how I don't know if you can hear my music, but I can. So here's some more explosive evidence of what happened. This is by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And there's a professor at our university who is an architect, and he says that just no way this building's going to fall. And you can see the explosion there. There's all these different things here. And then there's like forensic evidence too on the back of this. Like they found glowing hot metal. Here's a picture of them picking up glowing hot metal. A lot of witnesses have seen that. And particle analysis shows that there were like thermite chips and stuff like that. But one of the biggest mysteries of the whole 9/11 thing is what brought down building number 7. you can see how it just is free falling there. There was hardly any fires in there. Fires don't bring down. There was a fire in the World Trade Center before, and it didn't bring it down. But and just because the airplane crashed in there isn't going to bring the building down either. It's the building was designed to withstand an airplane impact. Like if on a foggy night, an airplane could have crashed in there or something. So they built the building strong enough to withstand the largest airplane at the time in the 1970s. And then you can also see the airplane hit on the side, and the pillars, the support system is in the middle. So it's just not theoretically possible to bring a building down with a fire. The diesel fuel burned off, the jet fuel burned off real quick, and here's a raging fire in a building in Madrid, Spain. Then there it is a couple days later, and the steel structure survived. It didn't melt, and it didn't cause the building to collapse. But anyway, there's so much bad news. I'm not kidding. About the economy, and like a lot of the columnists in the New York Times have been saying that people don't realize how bad it is. And here's kind of some statistics about the unemployment. You can see that how it's this is around 1980 here, and this is the worst it's been in a long time. The chart doesn't go back that far, and then here's our unemployment rate there, and you can see it was real high there. Oh, this is the change, the net change. This is on the front page too, and then here's the recent downturns, job losses in recent downturns, and how long it took to recover. You can see we're still down there, but so I don't know, if it's reached bottom or not, but it might take several years for it to go up again. Oh gosh, well, what else is going on here? This AIG thing, it's 80% of the losses were in the derivatives, and I've been telling you about these derivatives for a long time. It's like gambling about whether or not a stock or a company is going to go up or down. And since all these stocks went down, and the AIG is going to have to pay them off, and they didn't have enough assets to pay them off because it was deregulated by Bill Clinton on one of the very last days of his office, just before Christmas, signed this Commodities Futures Modernization Act, and then it was like in a huge stack of bills, or it was attached to it. And if you go to my website and look at my photographs, I've got some pictures on there that show how the value of the dollar is hardly worth anything anymore. It keeps going down and down and down. And there was an article in the paper today, if I can find it here. It was the government just printed $1.2 trillion, and that's going to cause inflation. So it just keeps getting worse and worse. And if I can find that here. Oh gosh. Well, anyway. Oh yeah, here it is. This is it, I think. Oh yeah, here it is. This was in our in our Daily Star, in our local newspaper. Let's see. There you go. The Federal Reserve sudden decision to print $1.2 trillion and pump up the economy is a warning signs of inflation. And there's a link on my on those photographs I'm telling you about to the Federal Reserve of St. Louis in St. Louis, and they have a chart showing the growth of the money supply, and I couldn't make a good copy of it. I'm going to try to print it out. I'll try to print it out and bring it in, but like it has a gradual climb. The money supply increases, but then like just a couple months ago, it just shoots straight up. It just shoots straight up like that, and like that's the 1.2 trillion, and so that's going to trickle down. We're going to have inflation, and this is what this article talks about. So your money's going to be worth less, and you won't be able to buy as much. I heard that my sister lost $2 billion in the stock exchange, and my mom lost a lot of money. But I've got all my money in real estate, so the only problem I have is paying the taxes on it. And it was like during the Great Depression that a lot of people lost their property because they couldn't pay the taxes on it. So just have to hope that I can continue doing that. It's been a pretty hard 2 weeks for me. It's just, I don't know what to say. I had like a learning experience the other day, but I really don't want to talk about it. Let's see what else we got here. This is going to be a long show, because I should probably take phone calls, because I really don't have too much to say, except how bad it is. These are the beneficiaries that AIG paid off here. And, mostly a bunch of banks that had bad investments, and a lot of them are foreign banks. Oh gosh, come on, here you go. There we are. There it is. What else do we have here? Oh gosh. Here they got one person saying that 10 million Ukrainians were killed in the famine, and then we have a professor that says 3.5 million. It's just like this Holocaust I'm telling you about it's just not practical to exterminate people with louse, disinfestant, and diesel exhaust, and that's what they allegedly used to kill these people with, because the louse disinfestant is very dangerous to use, and the way they describe it is they just dumped this stuff in the hole in the ceiling and then swept it out the door. And that's just not practical to do, because this hydrogen cyanide comes out of this inert material, and it takes a while to dissipate. It takes like 2 hours for it to dissipate. It's used to kill insects, to kill lice, and lice cause typhus, which is why they had to shave people's heads when they went into the concentration camps, and Dr. Mengele would stand on the platform to try to determine who didn't look too good, and a good doctor can tell by looking in your eyes if you're not doing too well. So the people that he said go to the left would get deloused, and like during the First World War, there was like 3 million Soviet citizens that died from typhus. And during the epidemics at Auschwitz, they had like up to 300 people died a day, and so they had to build these crematoria. And it takes like an hour to cremate a body. And so you have a logistical problem, because like during the Hungarian evacuation, according to these mythologists, these so-called historians, during the Hungarian evacuation, they allegedly killed like 10,000 people a day at Auschwitz. But there's no way that the crematoria could have handled that amount of bodies. They only had like 54 crematoria there, and not all of them worked at the same time, because they had to remove the ashes, and sometimes they had to replace the fire bricks in there. And so like some of these mythologists say they dug a pit, but Auschwitz has a very low water table. It's like a swamp there. And not only that, but it's just not practical to burn bodies in a pit. The air doesn't get in there. So like one of these so-called witnesses said that they had buckets on long curved rods, and they would scoop the sizzling fat out of the pit and pour it all over, I mean, it's so ridiculous. If you look at the eyewitness testimony and these confessions, which is the worst kind of evidence that you can have in a trial, the best evidence is forensic evidence, and that's what I'm talking about. We need to have a forensic examination of this alleged murder weapon, which they allegedly used diesel exhaust at Treblinka. But diesel exhaust is basically inert. It has a lot of particulates in it. The soot, the black stuff you see coming out of there is bad for your lungs. And some of those particulates can cause cancer. So, like, if you've got a diesel engine and you take it into the emissions testing station, they're not looking for carbon monoxide. They're looking for soot. So, like, in the mines here, in the underground mines here in Arizona, they use diesel engines to help remove the ore because the exhaust is basically inert. But according to these historians, they allegedly used diesel exhaust at Treblinka to exterminate people. So this whole thing it was atrocity propaganda. Auschwitz and all the so-called death camps were located in Poland. And after the Soviet Union came in there and liberated the camps, well, before they liberated the camps, a lot of the inmates decided to go with the Germans because they didn't want to end up in Soviet territory. So they went on marches and to try to get to a different concentration camp inside German territory. So, like, a lot of them went to Belsen, and that's where Annie Frank died. Annie Frank died of typhus in the Belsen concentration camp. And that's where all these army newsreels came from, where they show all these bodies being bulldozed into pits. And the reason that those people died was from an epidemic of typhus, that when they had that many people in one place, they didn't, it wasn't very sanitary, and so they couldn't delouse everybody, and so a lot of people died. And that's why all those bodies are seen in those pits. But, like, who benefited from World War II is, like, Stalin benefited from World War II. Stalin took over half of Europe and threw down the Iron Curtain. And General George Patton wanted to continue the war and conquer the Bolsheviks. He wanted to go in there and finish the war, but they wouldn't let him. And eventually, I believe, they killed General George Patton. They created that automobile accident, and then he died in the hospital under kind of mysterious circumstances. But General George Patton didn't have very many good things to say about the Jews that were coming into the American sector of Germany. He said that they were dirty, and he even lost his lunch because after he went to a synagogue, he was just, like, so disgusted. And you can, if you go to my website and click on the Holocaust webpage, there's a link to General George Patton's diaries. And I've seen his diaries in the University of Arizona Library. But the article I have is something I copied from somebody else's web page, which is no longer in existence. So now I'm getting quite a lot of popularity because my article's still there. All right, let's see. We'll talk about something else here. Here's a front page article, a front page picture in the New York Times. I mean, this is such a hopeless case here, hopeless cause. I mean, with the world population the way it is, they're trying to bring our attention to these starving, malnourished babies in India. I mean, she's 3 months old there, and they're saying that 42.5% of the children in India are malnourished. But like there's, this is kind of like plugging a leak in a dam, because with this geometric world population growth, there's just like no real solution. And I know that all these plutocrats that are ruling this world know that we're in big trouble, because look at the way this geometric population growth works. Here's a spike, and like my dad was born in 1929, so there was less than 2 billion people when my dad was born. And then in 1992, it reached 5.5 billion. And then in just 22 years, we're going to have 9 billion people in the world. It's going to go way up there. So there's really no way you can put the brakes on this. And so, like, my theory is that this whole economic thing was engineered, and they looted our country, these crooks, and nobody really knows where the money went. They're saying some of the money went to these banks, the French bank, and I'll tell you where these are. I don't see any Israeli bank on there, but that's just part of the money, though. Let's see. This is just This is just where 85 billion went of the bailout so far. We've got Societe Generale in France. And then we got Deutsche Bank. And then they bailed out Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs. And those two companies have already received a lot of bailout money themselves. So we're bailing them out twice. And like there's $531 trillion worth of derivatives, and these things that they're talking about are credit default swaps. So, but there's other kinds of these funny money things, these funny money papers they have, and one of them is, some of them are derivatives and some of them are credit default swaps. But if you Google 531 trillion, you'll come up, my webpage will come up first with a bunch of good links on there to the whole cause of this, which was, like I was saying earlier, it was when Bill Clinton signed that thing allowing this to happen, the Commodities Futures Modernization Act, which allowed this to happen. And now this guy, McCain, wants to have a study about why this happened. I can tell you why it happens, because this funny money stuff, and we should just tear up all this funny money stuff. And I say we should issue a whole new currency with 666's money on it. We should start issuing this kind of money, and then that'll show everybody what it really is, that no one buys or sells without the money of the beast on your mind and your hand. But like, nobody wants to talk about this. They say that you're a conspiracy theorist, and it's a knee-jerk reaction, and this is exactly what they're doing to me over at Wikipedia on these articles I'm trying to edit over there. They have certain rules to follow when you edit an article there. You have to have a reliable source, for one thing, and so I'm telling them that the 9/11 report by the government is not a reliable source. I mean, it's a biased report. Of course the government's going to say there was no conspiracy and that there weren't any bombs in there, because they're the ones that did it. It's just like the Warren report is biased. And Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission, and he later became president. And the whole Warren Commission was stacked with like C. Douglas Dillon, the Treasury Secretary, and who else was on there? That's a bunch of crooks. It's like I say, the rats were investigating the mice, and they covered it up. And nobody was satisfied with the Warren Commission report. Oh, John J. McCloy was one of Rockefeller's lawyers. Alan Dulles the head of the CIA was on the Warren Commission. And then you had Earl Warren, who was the vice president running mate of John Dewey. And C. Douglas Dillon was the head of the Secret Service. And then there was another committee to cover up the assassination. And if you go to my webpage, you can see an article I wrote about the Kennedy assassination. But the big thing right now is this 9/11 thing. It's kind of like the elephant in the room, you know. What happened to all the debris from the building, you know, where two 100-story buildings collapsed. But where's all the broken glass, you know, where are all the desks that were in the building, and where's all the concrete, you know, it was pulverized, it was blown up, you know. So I found out what type of bomb it was. You know, they have all kinds of different bombs now, but I can't remember how to pronounce this name, but I'm arguing about it on the Wikipedia page for controlled demolition at the World Trade Center, and they're trying to kick me off. You know, they're saying that they say I'm a conspirator. You can't, you know, and they have all these rules there that you have to have a reliable source, you know, and then you can't use original thinking there, you know. It can't be an original thought. It's just ridiculous, you know. I kind of wonder if, you know, the CIA is certainly monitoring it. I mean, you know, Wikipedia, if you type something in, it's like one of the first things that comes up for some reason, you know. It's got like a lot of, it doesn't have much credibility. Most of the people I talk to, when you cite a Wikipedia article, they laugh at you. But I'm trying to get them to mention I'm trying to get them to explain what happened to the World Trade Center, you know, like, where did it go? Why is there such a tiny debris pile? There should be a huge pile of everything, you know. Two 100-story buildings just vanished. Well, here's a chart that I have on my photo site that I updated, that's been updated recently on March 15th. These are the housing values, and you can see that it shot up in the year 2000. It shot all the way up to 200, and now it's back down. It's down to 137,000. That's what the average house sold for, and so we still have a little ways to go to get back down to normal here, and then at least the housing market will turn around. That is, if people can get loans, you know. I know it's all just kind of crazy. Oh, here it is. Here's that article where McCain says we must investigate the cause of this financial crisis. Yeah, right. You know, is it going to be another Warren Commission or another 9/11 Commission? There's so many stupid people that are saying that Barney Frank and Fannie and Freddie were the cause of this collapse, but it wasn't. It was these derivatives. And here's an article in the New York Times. This was March 11th. I believe it was a Sunday. And Ann Coulter and Bill Maher are doing a road show. And so one of the questions asked by the moderator was, what was the cause of this economic crisis? And Mr. Mayer said it was greedy bankers. But Miss Coulter said yuppie scum house flippers were the cause of this economic crisis. No, that's not the cause of it. I mean, why? This is one thing that it's been bugging me for so long, is like, why do people like Ann Coulter get all this attention? You know, I mean, I should have my own network TV station show on CNN or something, you know, and be able to talk about the truth. about how they mistranslate the Bible and how they don't explain about the 9/11 thing and the Kennedy assassination. I mean, how our government is lied, and like Nixon was involved in the Kennedy assassination. He was there in Dallas on the day of the assassination, and they have these pictures. There were some news photographers in Dealey Plaza, which is where the grassy knoll was. Well, that's where Kennedy was assassinated. And they had these news photographers took these pictures of these people that they arrested right after, well, it was like about 45 minutes after Kennedy was shot. And they found these two guys right here. There was a third one too, but these are the two of the three tramps. And then you can compare the pictures here to E. Howard Hunt. And these E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis were friends of each other, and they were both in the CIA. And E. Howard Hunt was like a master of disguise. And I think the third person was probably the gunman who fired the fatal shot. And you can see in the Zapruder film how Kennedy's head jerks back like that because he was hit in the head in the front, you know. And Oswald allegedly was behind him, and Oswald allegedly used this old Italian carbine, Manicure Carcano, that you have to pull back and load and everything, and they have a dicta belt from the police microphone, which was accidentally left open, so they had a tape of the bang, 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 you know, like that. A lot of people, witnesses, said that they heard more than one shot, or more than 3 shots. But since they only found 3 cartridges in the so-called sniper's nest, they had to say, well, no, you couldn't have heard more shots because all we found was 3 cartridge shells here. But there's so much evidence that there was somebody hiding behind that picket fence, behind the grassy knoll, and that a lot of people ran up there looking for where the shots came from. They thought the shots came from behind the grassy knoll, but the people that were behind the grassy knoll ran into this railroad car. There was a railroad bridge there, and it was a railroad yard, and they hid in one of these railroad cars. And then the guy in the switch yard said he saw some people running and getting in one of these railroad cars. So he called the engineer and told the engineer, hey, stop. And then he told the police, hey, you check out this boxcar and you're going to find somebody in there. And that's what they did. And according to the police report, the so-called tramps were like cursing really bad, and they didn't want to get out of the boxcar. So one of the policemen jacked a shell in his shotgun and told him to get out of there. And then they marched these people across Dealey Plaza where the newspaper photographers took their pictures. But it wasn't until like after the Watergate burglary in 1972 that E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis's pictures were all over the newspapers and everything. And then one of these Kennedy assassination buffs just happened to have a comparison of the tramps and the E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. And they got a hold of this guy named Dick Gregory. And I met Dick Gregory when he came to speak here. And I shook his hand after the show and told him, you know, I know the CIA killed John Kennedy. And he was really paranoid when I saw him, you know. And I got arrested by the Secret Service on a bogus charge, and they interrogated me about how I knew all this stuff about the Kennedy assassination. And I told them, well, I just happened to read this book called Coup d'etat in America by a guy named Michael Canfield and Alan J. Weberman. And I checked out all the sources, and I read a few more books about it too, but that's how I basically found out about it. And then Dick Gregory, that's what I keep telling Natalie Dylan, you know, like back in the 60s, the hippies were always looking for publicity any way they could get. Like Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman took a bunch of dollar bills and threw them over the balcony at the Wall Street and disrupted the stock exchange while everybody was grabbing the money. And they did street theater, you know, because they didn't have the internet back then. So I'm telling Natalie Dylan, I says, you know, why don't you let me take a picture of your hymen and put my watermark on it, and I'll put it up all over the internet and share it with everybody. And I'll probably get 1 million hits, and if they see my web page there, they can find out more about this information. Because, like, she's had worldwide publicity. She's been on, like, CNN. She was on the Laura Ingraham radio show, and I got to call up. I talked my way into calling. And if you Google Raquel Baranow and Laura Ingraham, you'll see more about the story there. And so she's been on the Glenn Beck show, and that's what got me in trouble with Natalie. I saw Glenn Beck like a little bit later, and Glenn Beck is really paranoid about the shit hitting the fan, and he's a Mormon, and he's digging himself like a escape place, and he's preparing for the fall of Babylon, and he's becoming very popular. So I sent him an email telling him, you know, how about doing another show with Natalie and letting me be on there, you know, and talk about how bad the situation is. And I gave him a link to my website and everything, but I never heard from him again. Oh well, it's almost time to go. I'm going to probably just go right to bed. It's been a really hard week, 2 weeks for me. And things just keep getting worse and worse. But, you know, a miracle can happen. The easiest way I could see to save the world would be for me to hook up with like 12 famous people that would be able to give me the publicity to tell everybody the truth, that we have to eliminate money. But I don't think that this is going to happen, you know. I think that, Jesus Christ warned to beware the signs of the times. And then, of course, Noah built his ark, you know, and he saw the flood coming. And I can tell you, I see a flood coming. And I might be just wasting my time here. But I'd like to get a hold of, Janet Napolitano, and tell her that, you know, we can survive on corn and soybeans. And I did it for a whole year. If you put a little pinch of salt in there, and some vitamin C. You got to take some vitamin C with it, and get yourself a corn grinder. Then you can live on that. But a lot of people won't be able to live on that because they just can't digest it. You know, it's like not that easy. So anyway, here's a really good book about this Holocaust I've been talking about. This guy Jürgen Graf critically examines the footnotes in Raoul Hilberg's work on the Holocaust. And you can download it free on the internet. If you go to my website, you can check it out. It's a real short book, and he explains all about the logistics and forensics of the alleged murder weapon. Plus, he analyzes a lot of these so-called witness statements about how they tortured a lot of these people that confessed. Anyway, my name is Raquel. In order to buy or sell, you have to have the money of the beast on your mind and your hand. And Jesus Christ said you can't serve God or money. You either love the one or hate the other, or hold to the one and despise the other. But the Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and scoffed. And that's in Luke 16. Anyway, God bless, peace and love. Bye.